Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How are y'all doing today? Pretty good? Eh? So-so? All right, well, good. Hope y'all are ready. I wanted to thank y'all so much for coming and checking in on this presentation regarding protecting your data from cyber intruders. Basically, it is all about protecting your company data, protecting your proprietary information, protecting confidential information. So it's focused more on prevention and some of the things that we take for granted, some of the things that are critical. Just kind of a roundabout question for everybody. Is anybody here in IT? No? Does anybody here have an IT department? All right, cool. So I know a lot of this might get a little technical. I'll try not to push it too much. But a lot of it is more about awareness and things to ask, things to go to your IT department for and to check on. Because of the simple fact that we deal with so much confidential information, we deal with being online all the time, and a lot of email communication, there's a lot of things we take for granted, a lot of things that we just click on, that we accept, that we connect to, and we don't stop and think twice about what could happen. And one of the things that pops up in all of that is, of course, the risk, the cybersecurity risk that you hear about everywhere, but nobody really breaks it down into the nitty-gritty of, well, how the heck am I supposed to do it? You know, what can our IT department kick in and look at? How are we supposed to be doing? IT says we're fine, but we got hit with XYZ virus or ransomware, which is probably the worst case. And ransomware is going to be one of our biggest focuses on this presentation because that is one of the most dreaded, and it is the most rampant that's going out there. Your traditional viruses, your Trojans, your adware, most of that stuff is already blocked and prevented. Your basic antivirus program on the computer is going to be able to stop a lot of that. However, ransomware works differently. It uses allowed code, allowed features on the computer that are supposed to be used for good, for protecting your data. Well, it turns it around and says, hey, it's mine now. So are y'all ready to move forward? Yeah? All right. I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to be blocking the presentation with my bahonkas. Sorry about that. My name is Josh Rucker. I'm a Microsoft Certified Professional since 2003. So I've maintained that certification and updated it annually. Basically just keeping myself with continued education on the products. So starting my first certification in 2003 was like with Windows XP. And Windows Server 2000, which are long out of date. Surprisingly, you still find them out in the field, quite a lot. Moving forward onto Server 2018, it's real important to continue that education. That's probably why we're all here, right? The CE credits. I am a CompTIA professional as well since that year. Got 18 years in the industry, bless you, working with networks, network infrastructure, security patterns, email, day-to-day activities, and all of my experience and focus has been customer-based. So there's been management internally, but a majority of my experience actually comes from managing customers' offices and seeing real-life scenarios. So a lot of what I'm bringing here today is actually based off of that, based off of information that I've physically seen. So it's not something I'm pulling out of a report to give to you guys. This is real-life situations. One of the things we have been very happy to be part of is actually preventing and recovering from ransomware that's happened within the companies that I've worked with. So it is a real thing. Don't think of it as something that's not going to happen here in the Valley or here in South Texas. It is abundant to get a ransomware infection. Okay. I'm going to cover 5 steps to mitigating the risks. Because in reality, the only thing you can do is do your best to prevent an infection. You cannot say, oh, with this appliance, with this software, we're going to be 100% ransomware proof. The minute you say that, somebody goes out there, tests it, and proves your theory wrong. Okay? So be very cautious of that. We're going to cover the threats, how to prevent it, staff education, which I have a few slides on because that is the biggest part of prevention. That is the biggest part of knowing how to protect your network, is educating your staff on exactly what to do when situations happen. Going forward, your second most critical thing, well, you might call it the most critical, is your backup. Your backup. If you walk out of one thing, one piece of information from this, please go and assess your backups. Look at the details. If y'all have access to the slide online, take the slide to your IT department, have them verify the backup methods being used to see if they match the criteria that I'm giving here for the backups, because it is the only way that you're going to be able to have a full working backup if you ever get an infection. Anything other than this, your backup is also going to get infected. Okay, so take watch for that section. And then of course the maintenance will be the last part, but it's minor. Know your foe. So do any of y'all know what type of people push out ransomware infections, or why? Russians? Well, partly. But Russians also create the antiviruses and have the protection methods. A lot of cybersecurity comes out of Switzerland and Russia, strangely enough. Kaspersky, one of the biggest antivirus companies globally, Russia. But they are also one of the ones that have the biggest focus on preventing infections and being up to date, being caught up, preparing reports, giving information, giving public information out. Strange enough, they're one of the most dependable people when it comes to cybersecurity. But yes, from the same area, it's about 50-50. There's actually a map online that you can look up and see real-time infections and where they're coming from. And there's a lot of it coming from overseas, of course. You actually see it targeting the United States, targeting South Africa, targeting China. It's kind of neat to see. We'll go over that later. But one of the things here that you need to know is that there are different types of hackers. Hackers are people trying to get access to the information, trying to prevent information. It is very rare to say, okay, well, you work at an antivirus company, you're not a hacker. Yeah, you are. That's what's called a white hat hacker. White hat hackers are people that work actively to find holes, find ways of getting in, but with the motivation of actually blocking and preventing and updating security protocols, updating software. So they're the good guys. They're the ones that have the knowledge to break stuff, but don't. They do it to prevent other people from doing it. The other part, however, you come down here, you've got the script kiddies, the blue hats, the black hats, gray hats, green hats, red hats, whatever. They all wear a hat, but it's not the white hat. Those are the ones you have to watch out for. These are the ones that have too much time on their hands, they're trying to do malicious things, and they're trying to get information. For what purpose? What's the main purpose anybody would steal information for? Money. Absolutely. So watch out for them. The bottom ones, the black hat, the gray hat, green hat, and red hat, those are the most dangerous of the group. They do have the most amount of knowledge, and most of the time they're motivated for bad reasons. So what's their motivation here? The money. Take a look at this. Have you all heard of Bitcoins? Raise your hands, just, sorry, giving y'all exercise. All right, so good. Bitcoins, just as a simple breakdown, it's legal currency, but it is internet currency. Now, y'all ever send money through Western Union? Okay, this is Western Union without any tracking, without any information, without any ID checks, without knowing who the other person is. So it's a simple transfer of funds between two accounts. Why is it so important? Because that is the main thing that is being used for ransomware attacks. That's how they get their cash. That's how they get their money out of this. The currency is legal, 100% legal. They are not using something that is out of the ordinary. They're not creating their own foreign exchange rate for anything. The way I like to think of Bitcoins is kind of like a stock. You can trade stock, you can pass stock, sell stock, and also it has a value based on demand, based on the market. Here, as of November 2017, one single Bitcoin averaged $9,721 for one Bitcoin. When you get infected and you're asked for a ransom, your average ransom is 300 Bitcoins. When you look at it on the computer, 300, that's $300, right? Or is that in pesos? I don't know. It's not. 300 Bitcoins, let's say with today's exchange, well, this is yesterday's. Sorry, let me be technical. One Bitcoin was $6,498.41. 300 Bitcoins for a ransom, $1.949 million. I don't know a lot of businesses that can survive paying a ransom of that size, that just have that cash sitting around. And this is really only the ransom part. You don't take into account the other parts that fail, the other costs, the cost of recovery, the cost of your business being down, your data being lost, cost of the IT department labor to get things fixed, new hardware that has to be purchased to try and prevent these types of problems. So that is just the ransom. But that's not all. One of the things we look at here is what's been going on, trending within ransomware, within attacks that are happening. 638 million attacks in more than 100 countries. That's over the last year alone. That's a million attacks. $325 million in ransomware damages for 2015. 2016, we saw a huge escalation for $836 million. 2017, people started keeping things under wraps. They didn't start reporting how much they paid. They started taking things into their own accounts. So we don't have a very good tally on 2017 numbers. All we know is average number of hits have increased, average number of infections have increased, but as far as money being reported, it's kind of being kept to a hush. So why aren't they caught? Same reason I mentioned. Bitcoin is untraceable. When they get that ransom, that money from your business, there is no, oh, okay, well, as soon as we deposit it, we call the FBI and they can trace it. They can't. The FBI cannot trace it. It is one of the rules written into Bitcoin that you cannot have the information of the recipient or the sender in any part of the transaction. Okay. So Bitcoin is used by a lot of entities. Banks are starting to accept Bitcoin, not so much in the United States, but overseas, because it is very popular over there. But one of the things that we look at here, like I mentioned, the higher cost of labor to repair infected systems. The other parts, data restoration costs, business loss. And that's probably the biggest portion that we don't look at. When we don't have access to our data, we can't take care of our information, we can't get the information that we need. We're so dependent on systems nowadays, having our database of clients, of references, of historical tracking, that if we don't protect those systems, everything stops to a halt, unless you still have that backup paper trail method in there. Or the other portion of it is actually coming into your backups and prevention. All right, so the good news is 99% of these threats are stoppable. Your ransomware is your largest and least protected. So that's at the top of your pile. That's your biggest worry. Viruses, your traditional Trojans, worms, malware, things your antivirus can stop right now. Not so much of a threat, still dangerous. They can still affect your network. They can still slow productivity down quite a bit. Attacks. Attacks are things that can happen on your website, on your email servers. These are to prevent you from having access to your information or gaining access to your information. So this is farming with a PH. That's not a typo, that's actually the technology term for it, which is basically when they are actually fishing for farms of information. All right, and phishing with a PH because it's the technical term, sorry. Email spamming, DDoS, which is distributed denial of service. It's when they try to attack your systems so much that the systems shut down. The systems can't handle, bless you. They can't handle the attack, so they literally crawl or stop to the point where you can't use them anymore and you're required. So don't prepare for if, prepare for when. Biggest clue here, when it's going to happen, because it is multiplying. They are becoming increasingly popular, and we're seeing it not in big enterprises as much, because they do a better job of protecting it. We're seeing it in small businesses. We're seeing it in medical offices, dental offices, law firms, city offices are probably one of the biggest ones. There's a lot of like budgetary restraints. in putting in hardware and staff restraints as far as labor being dedicated to specific things. You know, you're working on a different type of budget than a commercial. So can you prevent it though? Yes, yes you can. Don't get all weary on me that we're not going to be able to stop this. There are things you can do. Website filtering services through your firewall. Show of hands. Do you know if you have a firewall at the office? Okay, that's pretty good. All right. So the firewall is two pieces. You have a hardware or software piece that goes in and is basically monitoring the traffic in and out of the network. That firewall, however, requires updates. It requires knowing what it's supposed to look for. So having a firewall from 2003 does you no good. Okay, look at the age of the device, look at whether the subscription is up to date and how often it's updated. Big key component in prevention is your firewall. You'd be surprised. If you want to break it down into types of firewalls, you want to do one that checks your internal network too, not just blocks things from the outside world. Most of the infections that happen are happening because somebody clicked on something or opened something inside the network from an inside computer. Okay. It is very rare for an attack to be found coming in from the outside of the network and finding its way in. And it's a lot harder for a hacker too, to go in, uh-oh, you're young. Just kidding. Sorry. It is a lot harder for a hacker to come into the network from an outside source than it is for them to find a clever way of having you accept their connection, accept their link, log into your account with a fake website. Email filtering services, huge part of that. Huge part of that. If you can tie that in to your firewall or as a secondary component, that's your very good line of defense. A lot of these spam, phishing attacks, email attacks come in with a cleverly written email from a coworker because their password was weak, so they took over their account or sent an email account as them and just sent it to the address book or randomly guessed at email addresses. You'd be surprised. I can create an email that is crafted to look like, hey, I'm sharing a document with you. I can have it be sent as an employee whose name I found on y'all's company website, and then to get the rest of the email addresses, it's really simple. I look at the directory. I look at public information, public records, anything else that can be found to guess at a way of getting you that information so that you might click on that email. We're probably all guilty of this one. Repetitive passwords. How many have the same password for every single online account? Yeah, okay, I'm guilty too. I'm guilty too, all right. So, it is recommended to use different passwords for different systems. If you have to use a simple password, please don't use it for your bank. Please don't use it for systems you use every day and things that you leave on your computer and your session running, you forget to log out, or in a shared computer. Try to use strong passwords. That means uppercase, lowercase, special characters, alternative characters, different variations of even whatever uncommon phrase that only you can figure out, okay? Password of the password, the worst idea. Password 1234, worst idea, okay? Hackers out there have a common list of passwords. They are generated because they are a community. They get together and they share information with each other, better than we do with our own IT department. We might tell them, hey, something happened the other day and I don't know what, or we might hide things from them because we're in fear of getting in trouble because we may have done something wrong. They're quite the opposite. They're like, hey, I figured out a new password that's really common. Here it is on a public website, okay? Y'all have heard of the dark web? It's in a lot of advertisements recently. That's kind of their whole network. It's their public communities, it's their message boards, their forums, where they chat and discuss information, okay? They're very active in it. If you have more than a second between a post, that's too long in that community. For us in the external community, it's a little bit different. We might check on something when there's a problem, when we want to prevent, or if we're just needing information. Okay, they are on there constantly. So that's why their information is a lot more up to date, more current than ours. And as soon as they get that list of passwords, all they do is copy paste, put it in their what's called a script that they run to automate things, and they push it out. And they have it poking and checking different servers on the internet, trying it anywhere. It's a shot in the dark, but it's a very well-educated guess shot in the dark. Okay, it's not using blank information. It's using a lot of popular information out there. Also temp1234, very bad password. Just so y'all know. All right, so the big thing here though is even your internal passwords need to be strong. The password that you use to get into your computer at the office, don't treat that with smaller standards than you do the passwords for your bank. Because as soon as they have that internal password, that password to your computer, they are going to go into the computer and try and find what websites you've gotten into, and they're going to try that password on those websites. So if it's anywhere similar, anywhere even related, they've got some of those characters to try on the external websites. Okay, this is their mechanism. They're using investigative properties to hunt down access. All right. One other thing, most of us have this in our offices. Even if you don't know you have it, it's a database server. Database server is what's holding all your records, all your information. It's what is used at over probably 99% of businesses. It is a central repository of information. It's that system you log into to look up stuff. Even us as sales and IT engineers, we use database servers daily to be able to look up information. Google, anybody use Google? All right, that's a database server. The only thing is it's spread across multiple servers. It's a farm of servers, a huge farm. All right, so with your IT department, make sure you have them check this. Access to database servers, that is your company proprietary, specific, very important information, must be configured with only required protocols for functionality. What does that mean? That means only what is needed to access it should be allowed. Everything else, shut it down. And a lot of times database servers actually have extra protocols open just in case. Or the access to that database server is treated the way any other computer is. Yeah, any computer can reach out to the IP address, even though they're never going to touch that database. All right, that's dangerous. So have them check. Are our database servers accessible only from the computers that need access to them? Very important. If you have a guest login computer in the front, and from there you can go out and browse to the database server, that's asking for problems. That's asking for that computer to get infected and to pass it to the database server and steal all your information. Even guest client computers are real important to lock down. And this goes back to the communication. Immediately contact your IT department or your internal, your external vendor, your support group, your hardware manufacturer, whoever is in charge of your firewall, your computers, whoever's managing that for you, let them know right away. If you see anything weird, anything squirrely, you know, that oops, I clicked on a link and I'm not sure if anything happened moment, report it, please. Delaying allows the virus, the infection, to do its work. If you wait overnight, that is way too long. That's usually when things happen. They don't happen as soon as you click it and everything shuts down. I wish it was like that, because then it'd be easier to trace. But it's not. It's oops, I clicked on it and nothing happened. Okay, we'll move on. That's what throws us off. That's what throws off our brains in thinking that it's okay. It must have been a fake link. It must have been a glitch. It's not. That allowed it to come in, and then it's sitting there dormant, waiting with a timer, kind of like a bomb. Okay, that's how things happen. And while you have them on the phone here, check with them for this. The IT department or your vendor must regularly check for hardware and software updates, security bulletins, best practice methods, documentation, and most important, make the change. Not just look it up and put it on the project list. If there is a security update, it needs to be top priority on your list. I don't care what else is going on, whose computer is messed up and can't have access to their email. It is pretty drastic, okay? Y'all need to put priority on that. Implementing the changes. And I know a lot of times the challenge on that is really that IT doesn't have a lot of time. A lot of us work off of a single IT guy or 2 IT guys, and they've got 80 projects that they need to finish within a season and 200 computers to deploy within a certain timeline. Security needs to be a priority, okay? And you'll see why. Computer patching and updates, this is part prevention. Don't do it individually. And this focuses on the IT guy's time, the IT girl's time, sorry. There is a lot of women in IT, just so y'all know. And they're awesome. No. All right, so don't do it individually. That kills into your IT guy's time. That kills into project time. That's why a lot of things don't get done. Get your IT guy to find, or help them find, a software that can inexpensively and easily maintain the patches and security on your computers, your servers, and your hardware. They do exist. Windows workstations, it's incredibly easy. There's software like AutoMox that is incredibly cheap per computer, talking pennies per computer. And you can have it automatically report, notify, push updates, skip updates. It's incredibly simple. So they can look at a single screen, check the health of the network on security patches for the computers and servers, and know in 5 seconds what needs to be addressed, what needs to be checked, as opposed to 24, 48 hours of checking computers individually and running updates individually. That's a waste of time, okay? Compare the cost of labor to the cost of the software for doing that, and compare that against the risk of not deploying security patches on time, right? The cost of that software is incredibly better than any other method of doing it. Plus your IT guy will probably love it, but right here, we're done, we're good. This part's fine. It's called work smarter, not harder. That's very common. All hardwired and wireless connected devices must be patched regularly. All right, so hardwired and wireless connected devices. Is that cell phones? Yes. Cell phones are a problem if they are on the network. Time clock systems. Anybody think there could be a security risk in a time clock system? Maybe. There is. There is a business, a medical hospital, got a ransomware infection because they did not update the security of their time clock units. I want everybody checks in, clocks in and out every day. It was connected to the network. It had access to the database system because it was putting its backups on there. Messed everything up. A time clock. Yes?
HEB yesterday put out on the internet that they were shutting down some of the HEBs because they were scanning zero and they were going through the line.
Nice. Which HEB was it? I need to know.
So it wasn't scanning whatever you were purchasing, it was scanning zero.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and that was just one HEB, there were several.
Several of them? Okay. Yeah, that's pretty fishy. That's bad. That is a database server that all those registers read off of. So they're all reading directly off of it. Those systems are point of sale systems. They need updates too. A lot of times those systems are running Windows. Windows is one of the biggest targets for security hackers because there's Windows everywhere, you know. Mac as well. For those of you Mac users, don't feel calm. They are attacking Macs quite a lot, okay? Just be cautious. Take the same security steps. If you don't have an antivirus on your Mac, do get one. There have been infections on Mac quite often, even with all the updates from Apple, okay? Apple does its best, but they're not hackers, all right? This includes printers. There's been hacks that have happened through gaining access to a printer. There's printers that run Windows, surprisingly. There's printers that run Linux, Unix OSs, same thing Android phones run. And those things have security holes. Somebody can gain access to that device change the configuration and make it do malicious things. All right. Time clocks, talked about that. Smart TVs, not so much, but yes, they are a security risk. Tablets, smart thermostats. Your Nests, your what are they called? B something? Simple B or something like that. The smart thermostats are connected to your Wi-Fi. They are connected to your network. Okay. If that thing is not password protected, it is a risk. It does go down to that much detail. Personal devices. We talked about cell phones. They should not be connected at all to the company network. If you have a guest network, great. It needs to have internet access only. Okay. If you have a tablet that you're running for business, that needs to be connected only to this network that it needs to access. If you're going to play games, you're going to access other stuff, social media on there that's not business related, get off that network. All right. Tablets do get infected. There's false apps out in the stores that can say they're going to do one thing, they don't work. They're running malicious code in the background. The stores are doing their job to filter apps and try and restrict those and block them out, but there's literally millions of apps being registered to be able to be on the stores, and they're filtering them out in the thousands. So there's a ratio there that's a little bit off. Now, are y'all caught up so far with everything? All right. So one of the big things I want to move on to is educating the staff. That's why we're all here, just to find out more information. So staff education is probably your biggest preventative method that you can do moving into this. Why? Because that's where most of the infections come from. Ta-da! All right. So, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, said Benjamin Franklin. That entirely relates to IT. It entirely relates to networks. There's more to it than you think. And everyone needs to know that ignorance is not bliss. It's a shortcut to catastrophe. All right? Schedule mandatory in-house seminars to educate all employees. I know you're looking at me going, that's not possible. We ain't got time for that. There is. You can have 15, 20, 30 minutes, even if it's once every 6 months. You can do it. Okay? How is this done? You're going to look at educating employees, and I'll give you all information to take with you on the slide on the presentation so that you'll have some resources to get into and look up online what you can do during these in-services. There's a lot of public information available that's really easy to access and that helps, okay? Because a lot of us don't think about it until the problem happens. And that's what hackers take advantage of, is that we don't care until it affects us, all right? So, look at this, get everybody. That includes janitors and maintenance people. Oddly enough, all right? Janitors plug in their phones to computers to charge them sometimes. Or they might have a USB drive that they need to do some homework on because they're trying to get out of that janitor job. All right? So they'll plug it into a computer. They don't know it's infected. They infect the network. None of the employees that work there during business hours did anything wrong. The after hours cleaning staff infected the network. That is a reality. That has happened. All right? Give them information, take a short quiz, find out how educated your staff is on cybersecurity, what they would do in situations. Oh, I clicked on a link. What's your next step? Close it? No. Report it to IT is the next step. Little things, okay? Make it a requirement to report any, that was weird, moments. All right, that's what we were talking about earlier. When something happens and there's no after event, after you click on that email and logged in with your portal and got the wrong web page, you closed it. Oh, nothing happened. All right, that was a weird moment. Report it to IT. They might hate you for it because they'll have to rebuild the workstations and servers if you don't, and they'll hate you even more for not reporting it. Okay, missing files. Yes, it happens more often than not. If the file that you're trying to access has some new name and you can't double click on it, but there's another name right next to it that sounds just like it, don't open it. Look at it. Report it. Is this a legitimate file? If you double click on the name of your document and it tells you, hey, you got infected with ransomware, you need to tell IT. That's pretty obvious, right? Okay. Take action immediately. Report it immediately. Do not try to fix it yourself. When that show of hands in the beginning, when I asked if anybody was in IT, nobody raised their hand. All right, do not fix it yourself. Have an adequate person come in here and do it, and look at what happened. Look at the situation. All right. On staff education, y'all know what a URL is? No. Maybe. Some of you. Okay. A URL is that address at the top of a website where you type in cnn.com, cbs-tx.com, whatever it might be. That's your URL. Whenever you get an email or you go to a website, that URL is the first thing you look at to make sure you are accessing the correct website. If you type in wellsfargo.com, it will take you to a website that looks like Wells Fargo, and it will have a login page. It is not Wells Fargo. Okay? Pay close attention to it, because those are the ways, the simple ways that hackers take advantage of our absenteeism in all this. Of our, well, it looks the same, so it must be right, so I'm going to log in with my bank account information. Okay? They will create websites that look exactly like the real website, but it is not. It will not give you access to your account. Actually, no, I take that back. There was one report of a website that was created to steal your information and then actually redirect you to the proper website with a request to have you log in again. All right? So watch out for that. Grammatical mistakes, spelling errors, generic salutations. If you get an email where the English ain't quite right, it's a sign. All right? When in doubt, verify your request by contacting the company directly or using information found independently, contact information found independently, not from the email. So if you get a strange email and you reply to it, hey, is this real? Do you want me to click on it? Sometimes they'll actually reply back. The hackers will reply back, yes, go ahead. I need you to look at the document. Okay? It happens. Be careful with that. If you get a strange email, call the person. Don't forget, we all have a cell phone, all right? It's 2-3 seconds for a phone call versus an email and maybe clicking on it just in case it's real. You want to be very cautious of that. So train your employees how to spot potential ransomware attacks is imperative. Knowing how they try to get in. There's resources I'll give you here on how to spoof your network, how to test your employees, how to try getting your employees' credentials by sending them a fake email that looks a lot like a real email, and see how many of them log in. The beauty of that is you'll get a report that comes back and says, hey, so-and-so, yeah, they put their password in. Sorry. All right.
Our IT department did that.
They did?
Yes, they did, and caught
Awesome.
several employees and faculty.
And that's an initiation.
And it was a good training tool, it really was.
Yeah, and that's how you make people more aware. It's like, oh, hey, I didn't stop to think. It looked, it came from you. I thought it was real, so I just clicked on it.
And then the next one they sent out that was totally legit that they needed us to take, somebody popped back and said, is this another test? Now they don't trust them.
Well, and that's the whole focus of this. When you're online, you're in a public space. You don't need to trust things. You don't need to trust where you're heading into, because somebody can switch things around on you and give you different information. All right. Training, fake websites, email attachments. A lot of ransomware infections have lessons from email attachments, from friendly people. Okay. All right. Keep going here. External or personal devices? No. It's an easy word to learn, to use. No. No personal devices on the office network. I can't stress it enough. It is one of the biggest dangers. Personal laptops, if they're not protected properly. don't plug them into the Wi-Fi. Okay? Yeah, guest Wi-Fi's, cool, have at it. That's different. All right, if you do have to say no, explain the policies and the risks. It goes back to staff education. Don't just tell them no, and then they're like, oh, well, that guy was a, ugh, you know. Or I don't like her, she didn't let me on the Wi-Fi. Do you know the Wi-Fi password? Yes? Okay, great. They're gonna look for alternative sources. Explain why. Explain the reasons for it. Explain that you're protecting the business, the entity, your information. There's a purpose behind it. So have IT test your staff, like she mentioned. Run a random test. It's really cool to see, easy to do. Use websites. Now here's some of the resources you can know that you can use, and that's probably the ones that your IT department used. There's a website called knowbefore.com. Great resources on it. A lot of information. Personally, I'm signed up for their email newsletters, even though I hate email newsletters in my inbox. I love theirs. They are constantly creating new ways of testing and educating people. Software that your IT department can run to test the specific security of your network, and it's free. They don't charge for it, okay? It's part of staff education and preventing all this stuff from spreading. Fishme.com, another great resource, and that's PHISH. That's a really good information website to visit. Use these two after you've done the staff training. See if they paid attention. All right. Free security awareness resources and infographics regularly. You want to repeat information. If you had a staff training course, follow up with some documentation, follow up with an email. Best practice is probably to give them physical material. Why? Because I work for a copier company. No, I'm joking. No, one of the big things is our memories retain information 40% better when it's in color and it's printed. The information that we grab off of technology, our brains don't retain it so well, according to market trends. So you want to maintain that. After a staffing in service, you want to maintain updates. You want to give them more information, catch them up. All right, your backup is the most critical of all. It's the one thing that you need to have when you assume you're going to be infected. Like I mentioned, it's not if, but when you get infected. Have your backups. Now here, there's two things you need to do. Local, on-site backup, on-premise backup every night. If you're doing a backup once a month, if you have to restore that, you're losing a month worth of labor and data entry. That's money. You don't want to leave money out with that. Do not do monthly backups. You want to do nightly backups. Look at your labor investment as a financial investment, because time is money. Now, your backup needs to do the following things. It needs to be a pull backup. Ask your IT department, are we doing a pull backup or a push backup? Pull backup means that your backup device is actually going out and getting the information, okay? As opposed to your servers and your computers putting things into the backup. When ransomware hits or a virus infects a specific computer and that backup runs that night, that computer's gonna push that infection over, all right? If the backup device is reaching out and pulling the information, it's different. It's one direction, all right? The backup itself is initiating. Backup files must not be accessible via the network. Your backup appliance cannot be accessible from a computer, a workstation, possibly even another server. Why? Because a server can be hit. And this is all based on seeing realistic ransomware attacks happen. If your data on your backup can be accessed from a computer, it can be infected. Exclusion to that though, if your backups are encrypted, all right? But you do want your backup device to do a full backup. Encrypted backups. Ransomware encrypts your data. If your data is already encrypted, it can't re-encrypt it, okay? So encrypted backups are really critical on that. You want to look at your backup solution to ensure that the data centers and the backup solutions are compliant with HIPAA, SOX, GLBA, SEC, and NASD standards. If they are not, do not use them. that means that they're following the proper protocols on protecting your data. If they are not certified